Well, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon to some. Lovely to be here again. I'll give it a few minutes as the people are rolling in. But yeah, for those who don't know me, my name is Matthew. I'm the COO of BrewNinja. Super happy to be here back at CBP for the fall conference. Thank you again to Andrew for organizing everything. It's been a great experience so far. Um, but yeah, for those who don't know, BrewNinja, we are a brewery management software. We're designed to help brewers manage everything from inventory to production logging to sales distribution. And with integrations like with products like QuickBooks and Square, we are the source of truth when it comes to your real-time inventory and real-time cost of production. So, of course, as my title says, craft brewing is becoming saturated. Now, of course, it may not be here at this moment, but it is coming. I'm very excited to bring this topic up as I really want to take this time, in the fall conference. I think it's a perfect time. It's coming to the end of 2023, with many of us planning out kind of the next calendar year. It's a great time to bring this topic up to prepare for 2024 and kind of what's to come. Again, it's a thing that just isn't exactly happening yet, but it is fairly imminent. Now, I'm not going to make this all kind of doom and gloom presentation. No matter what the data says, hey, we don't really know what's going to come up. But I do want us to take this time to recap the situation, recap the industry, and kind of talk about the strategies that we can consider as we hit that point of saturation. So it's no secret that, hey, there are more breweries today than there were like 10 years ago, right? In 2022, US sees 9,552 craft breweries, and that was a 3.17% increase from 2021. But if we start diving deeper into the numbers, if we look at kind of combined statistics for microbreweries and tap rooms together, that number starts actually declining since 2020. Right, there was a 7% growth in 2020, 4.4% growth in 21, 3.9. Now, again, we're still growing as a whole. It's not like we're actually in the negative yet, but it's just a sign that what, we're not growing that 8 to 10% year over year that we were seeing back in 2019 and before. Right, we're now seeing a bit more modest numbers in the growth, and we can start seeing that curve kind of taper off a little bit. But what is peak brewing, if you will, a term that we will say we coined? What is peak brewing, right? What does it mean when the market is saturated? Well, for the most part, it's kind of like that. For those who've taken economy back in university and college days, where demand and supply is kind of start to meet, right? It gets really saturated when we also look at that there are just more producers than there is demand for the product itself. So, and we can apply this to either the market as a whole, right? We can say, hey, we're starting to see that there's just less demand for craft beer versus the number of breweries. But we can also apply this idea to local markets now, where it just may be more saturated in one small section of the market, maybe the local city or that part of the county versus, other states or other cities, right? So when we're looking at market saturation, even though what I'm saying today may not apply directly to your local city or situation, we can look at it as kind of as a whole to say, hey, look, things are not as strong as they were before. So what do we do in order to prepare for, the upcoming future? And if we're to apply that to the local market, we can then say, okay, well, this might just means there's one too many tap rooms in the area, right? than there is customers coming into the area. Or maybe if we look at kind of a statewide distribution, we can then say, okay, well, if the market is saturated, maybe there's just one or two too many brands for that demand within the state. And the brands could be from internal local, local breweries within the state, or just people from out of state trying to start importing in and kind of expand their reach as well. So now that we know what market saturation is, what we know what we're talking about in terms of peak brewing. How did we get here, right? Again, our numbers as an industry of breweries has been growing quite immensely. So that's definitely one thing that's been driving up our supply of craft beer. I'm not complaining, but there might be a limit at some point. Um, but there's also more competition, right? More competition from supplementary products that is eating into the market share of just alcoholic beverages, right? Over the past few years, we start to see the boom of seltzers, ready to drink products like, you know, um, flavored, soda water, etc. Ready to serve, so kind of canned cocktails type products, ciders, wine. I'm kind of bringing wine into this conversation mostly for the fact that we also are starting to see wine producers create single serve um, product SKUs. In the past, we kind of not look at wine as a major competitor, mostly because, well, people don't just a single person wouldn't drink one single bottle of wine. Usually, it's more of a shared thing. It's a slightly different experience, but we are starting to see that distribution of single serve um, wine products, and I think that's a great way to bring that into kind of the viewpoint of breweries and brewery owners to say, hey, that's a competitor right now. And also, there's always this looming legalization of cannabis beverages. We haven't seen a crazy boom of that yet, but I think that's something we should also consider moving forward as a competition. Of course, we also have felt it. Economy has been kind of slow. The inflation, the uncertain economic times really does also shape the buyers' trends and perspective. So that's kind of also a factor moving into kind of this saturated market idea. And finally, we're also looking at the people, right? Generationally, hey, Gen Zs aren't buying as much alcohol. They are also spending, less compared to millennials, um, and that could be either, hey, just overall that generation is more spread out in terms of all different types of products, or we can also look at this number and say, well, maybe they're just haven't had as much, disposable income. But this is something I think many of us need to be aware of, um, because yes, time will tell whether or not disposable income will increase, but at the same time, we have to keep mind of that and kind of plan accordingly. So, what are some things that breweries can do to when their industry becomes saturated? Before we dive into that, I want to just do a quick glance of what we're doing right now. So when things were great, inflation was at all-time low, interest rate was all-time low, we were doing these things as well as for each of the breweries, right? We're differentiating our product. We're creating different market segmentation, right? We are selling different IPAs, multiple products lines, innovating new flavors, right? Trying different things with our product, making sure that we focus on customer experience, right? From the moment they walk into your tap room to the product purchase experience, tap room experience, and of course, really spending a lot of time creating that branding around the brewery and having that connect with the customer. Um, but moving forward, as what I want to kind of focus more on is kind of the how, right? As time goes on, yes, we still have to do all of these things on the left. We still have to create different products, look at all of the market segmentation, etc. But maybe it's also time to review and look at, partnerships, diversification of further diversifying your product lines, looking at different geography, um, looking at different operational efficiencies, and of course a big thing, which is leveraging data, right? Now every brewery has a stack of technology that they use, from the point of sale to the accounting platform to Shopify. All of these different tools hold your information, and also is a great way to for you to leverage moving forward, if you're not always already doing so. Again, I'm kind of speaking more so to the masses of everybody. This is something we should consider. Um, by no means am I saying, hey, if you're not doing any one of these things, you're kind of doing it wrong or anything. I just want to make sure I cover all my bases. And again, I want this talk to be more of a conversation starter, right? Things might be tapering off, and if it does, what are we going to do? So let's look at partnerships and alliances. Hey, many breweries are already doing this, right? We see producers partner with other producers to create co-branded beer, right? Alliances with kind of that local um, group of breweries as well. They're very, it's kind of been the staple, right, if you will, that I would be friendly to all the different breweries kind of in my geographic surrounding, so that we form this really great area for our customers to go into. But on top of that, what else can we look at, right? Can we start looking at partnerships with producers of some of those supplementary products, the wines, the ciders, the non-alcoholic beer brands, to further kind of to create a better experience for your customers, right? You have the tap room, you have the location, and kind of the decor. Why not possibly bring other products in, so that we can say, hey, come here, hang out. If you don't like beer, no problem. We have some of these other, fantastic products, local producers, etc., etc. Again, I'm sure many of us are doing that already. Just kind of want to bring that out. Um, we also start seeing a lot more of some of buying groups as well, right? Utilizing them as a way to get better economies of scale. Distribution partners. Oops. Distribution partners, right? So while we're looking at partnerships, you can't just forego the idea that, hey, should we look at different distribution partners? Should we look at them at all if we're already self-distributing, uh, as a way to um, increase our reach, increase our brand, etc. And finally, strategic mergers. It's it's kind of in the news already. There's so many talks of different breweries being merged together, either being bought out by regional breweries or regional brewery groups, or just kind of forming their own, right? Um, I've definitely seen other merger types where it's not so much a way to just say, hey, I want to get bought and call it a day. I've definitely seen other breweries where, hey, yeah, we've merged, but I still handle my own brewery, you handle your own brewery. But organizationally, we come together and be like, hey, how can we be more effective and more efficient? How can we, cut costs by maybe offering a better purchasing power, et cetera, et cetera. So diversification, you know, a lot of times, having said, hey, some of the reasons of market saturation might be supplementary products. Have we also considered diversifying into those complementary products? I think we all seen producers start to diversify some of their products from beer to include seltzer or include wine. Some producers are producing wine as well, but also like maybe de-alkalized beer, right? As I understand, sometimes there are ways to de-alkalize beer where you also get the alcohol afterwards, and maybe that's something that you can further utilize. Kind of one batch of beer and creating two different products. Um, on that same note, we can also look at diversifying the offerings a little bit, creating that premium brand experience versus kind of that regular brand experience. Oftentimes in a economic recession, we do see that consumers are kind of lean towards the more economically priced products. So is it time to start looking at that and say, okay, well, we can also diversify kind of the branding a bit to include, you know, my one pale ale that can be purchased and sold as a regular pale ale, and then maybe doing something to it afterwards that creates a more premium product. Same batch of pale ale, same recipe, but maybe you can process it a little bit differently to create that higher margin product as well. By no means is my list exhaustive as well. I do understand it's not, you know, um, it is kind of more catered around what I know, if anything. I come from a background of sales and marketing and kind of operations. So, um, kind of keep that in mind as well. Um, as we're looking into the new year and as we're looking at kind of that slowdown of economy, is it time for us to also look elsewhere, right? Expansion by either a wider reach of distribution or maybe a physical location. You know, historically speaking, traditionally, we would more normally just think, hey, I'm just going to go get a new distro partner, or I'm going to focus more distribution on, you know, um, this particular area or out of state, etc. But you know, have we also considered the idea that maybe, hey, we could create a secondary tap room in a different physical location that can kind of supplement our branding, if you will, right? Have we considered partners that can expose the product to different locales as a form of testing it as well? Building partnerships with restaurants or marketplaces, things like that. And in a marketing sense as well, marketing is a great way to test waters, right? Um, and of course, I think a lot of us are, a lot of breweries are doing this already, where you would go to different um, farmers markets and really, hey, look at farmer market in this corner of the city, in this corner of the city, or maybe two cities across, etc., to start building out that brand awareness. And you can do that for any form of marketing, right? You can also apply that same theory to running ad campaigns like Google ads, or running Facebook ads on, in a geolocation kind of cachement, so that we can say, okay, well, my brand is doing great where I am, but if I were to test the waters and go sell it to the state over, is there anything to preempt that being there, or is there anything to help drive sales over there instead of just relying on that distributor? And of course, we also do have to look at kind of that improvement of operational efficiency, right? The past couple points was really about, hey, on a marketing, on sales, externally, what can we do to, you know, improve ourselves, weather the storm, if you will, but also look at internally, hey, what's been happening that we don't really like, or maybe we could focus on in order to make things a little easier for ourselves, right? Are there any ways to reduce cost, reduce overhead, increase some efficiencies so that our staff members have more time to do other things as well? Um, and a lot of times, in terms of our experience with breweries and talking to them about data and information and management, a lot of it also is about where that data is, right? Oftentimes, before they come to BrewNinja, the sales data is in the CRM, or the production data is in an Excel spreadsheet somewhere, or your owner has 500 Excel spreadsheets that they've made. Great, it works perfectly, but no one else really knows what to do with them. So I think it's also time to look at that efficiency standpoint and say, okay, well, I shouldn't be the only one handling all of this information. How can I better utilize or operate my system, and have more people touch it and have more dependencies within the team. And of course, improving your efficiency, lowering your cost obviously leads to more competitive pricing, that should it comes down to it. And of course, increased margins. And on top of that point really is to leverage that information, right? Again, it might be in your QuickBooks or it might be in your spreadsheet, but once it's there, if it's just sitting around and it's not providing the kind of the feedback that you're looking for, then there are some problems with it. One thing I really wanted to also provide today, and kind of for you guys to take home, is kind of a review of some of those analytics and data benchmarks. Again, I think some of the information that I've provided may not be super unique or may have been repeated elsewhere. I really want to take today as a way to kind of recap and provide this information as a review process. So we've created something called a bulletproof brewery survival metrics. And the first thing, of course, is profit, right? Hey, is my brewery or are my products profitable? Understanding your cost of goods and kind of that general sale price per product SKU. Is my product profitable? What's my gross margin for a period of time? And two really big things to look at is the profit margin by the product and sales volume per product. So this shows you, hey, how much I'm selling of each SKU, which are my best selling SKUs, and am I making enough money out of those best selling SKUs? And vice versa, right? What's my worst one? And if the product margins are super high, great. But a combination of these two reports is going to give you a really good look at kind of that profit share, or just kind of like where the profit and where the money's coming from. Next, of course, expenses, right? Looking at your operating expense, making sure you have a handle on staff and HR, human capital. I know there's some talks, I think this conference that also look at human capital and HR. I really suggest going into those and kind of looking at them as well. EBITDA is a staple for any financial KPI, right? Your banks will need it. If you're talking, partnerships and mergers, acquisitions, they will need it as well. And again, I think it's a way for us to review, hey, look, if I know these numbers, when I go into those deeper conversations, we're going to have a better conversation. You're going to be presenting yourself and your brewery much more strongly. In terms of growth, I've kind of separated these two slides here. One more focused on breweries that are focused on distribution, right? If you are a brewery that's just mostly, hey, I have a tap room, but my focus is on distribution through my distribution channels or self-distro, of course, sales really equals to the number of customers I have, how frequent they order, right? And kind of that average order size. One thing to really look at is how often and what are the volumes of their reorder. So if there's one kind of report to figure out from whatever system you're using, I really do suggest creating some kind of report where you can say, hey, look, I have X number of customers that should be reordering within this next period. They usually order these products, or they usually order X amount of products, so that you can say, okay, well, my sales staff does two things, right? My sales staff can contact them early to figure out what kind of products they're looking for the next reorder, and two, I can do better forecasting for that next period if I need to. Better forecasting means I can look at my production capacity a little bit better, making sure that I can fulfill the sales needs. Do I need to reorganize my distribution reach, right? Do I need to go further out? And of course, turnover, right? Inventory turnover pretty much just means how fast I'm selling my product. So the moment I produce it, it sits in my inventory. How many days until that same case of beer, same keg of beer gets sold off and shipped out, right? So now you can see how much space you actually need, how much product you're holding at any one time, etc. And of course, once you understand the sales and sales cycles, you can then start kind of figuring out, well, is it a keg that I'm selling more, or is it a can? Can I pre-purchase more cans so that I get a better deal from my producers? Or do I need to worry about, whether I have enough empty kegs, etc.? And on the flip side, if you're more of a brew pub or more of a tap room focused brewery, you know, instead of the number of customers, we're really looking at the number of seats or tables, if you will, right? And then the number of turnovers per night that we would normally see for those tickets, and of course the average ticket size. One thing I really want to bring out, as a point is really, yes, the tap room is hard, right? If we don't have a good, count of the number of seats or the number of tables, then we can really just look at, what's my average ticket size and how many tickets do I get a night, right? But consider using marketing tools and marketing metrics to kind of as a way to understand your taproom metrics. And one thing is loyalty programs, where really at the end of the day, you can, while they may or may not bring more customers in, but it is a great way to utilize metrics in your tap room as a way to understand your customer base as well, right? I can see I have a thousand members in my loyalty program. They all love certain beers, or maybe they always order 2 or 3 per visit. Those are the kind of metrics that we are looking at, and we can start using that to better plan your tap room, plan the events, things like that. So I've said all I said. What are we going to do now, right? We have time. It's only mid-October. You guys have at least 2 months to 3 months before we really have to focus on 2014 and kind of act on some of the strategies, right? I really want this again to be more of a conversation around strategy for 2014 and kind of for the coming years. But you know, um, look through some of these things. Look through your metrics. Look through how you're operating at the brewery and say, what don't I like, right? What don't I like, and what are the options there? It could be improving, certain efficiency at the brewery. It could be looking at software. It could be looking at, loyalty programs, whatever you have. So come out of this meeting, hopefully you would have, I would have kind of triggered some ideas, triggered some emotions to say, hey, look, let's look at 2014 and look at it in a strategic way so that I know what I want to do. Make some calls, maybe answer them, right? I'm sure many of you have received calls from other breweries or larger breweries trying to buy you out. Not saying you have to take them, but maybe listen to what they have to say and kind of use that against them, right? Like use that to build out your own plan so you know what you want to do moving forward. And of course, get some management software. Ultimately, again, I think I've mentioned this before. We are a brewery management software. When we talk to our customers and prospects and such, I still say probably a good number of people are still using Excel, and Excel is great, but ultimately you may not be able to pass that down to your management team, or you may not be able to take a vacation day because someone doesn't have access to some of the information. um, Ultimately, we're trying to be the software that comes out and kind of alleviates that issue, and also brings a bit of a standardization so that we can say, hey, everyone's going to the same place, writing the same things, and present it with kind of the same framework in order to have all that information in one place. And we do serve breweries from 500 barrels a year to 50,000 barrels a year. So if anyone's thinking, hey, I'm just a tap room, or I'm just a small brew pub, I don't need this, you know, um, it's not the matter of size. I always tell people it's a matter of how complex your brewery is. If you have more people working and doing different things at the same time, I think after 3 or 4 brewery staff, I think that's a good time to start looking at an organized software like this. And if you're 50,000 barrels or more, um, you know, our great sponsor Encompass is also a really good software. So I'll give them a little plug here as well. One thing I do want to mention is we do have the um, a cheat sheet that we've created. Um, the Bulletproof Brewery Survival Metrics, we've created that in a form of a cheat sheet. It's full of Excel. It's just an Excel spreadsheet form that you can use and utilize. So if you are interested, please do give me an email. My email is matt@brewninja.net. If anyone does have questions around what we do, or just anything I've said today, I would love just to meet up for a coffee, and always good to chat more about business and marketing. So that's my time. If there's any questions, I'll give it a minute. If not, thank you again. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you guys at the next CBP event. If not, we'll see you in Vegas. Thanks.